Hello everyone! I have been waiting to do this for a long time. I have got all of my trains nicely ordered and I'm going to do a big train video. So this one's going to be a little bit long. I'm going to go through every single one of my trains and give you an idea of what I have, how history kind of went through the series of how we went from steam way down to diesel. These are all in order. They start from 1830 and they go all the way down to 2015 plus. So I'm going to start up here. I'm going to work my way down. I'm going to try to keep this under an hour video. So there's a lot to cover here. There's a lot of train stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and start. All started kind of in 1830s. I'll go ahead and pull this one off. Now, obviously, this is the Frozen 2 train from Lionel. It's one of my favorite early trains because I just love this color scheme. But let me start at, this is not 1830. I actually have the two cards over here. These are kind of the first American steam locomotives, kind of starting with this one right here. This is the Tom Thumb, and then you can see how basic it is. It's a boiler right here. We got a piston right here. We got some wheels. And that's kind of all it did. It went back and forth, but with the steam power, it was efficient. It was able to move heavy things, and so that really started the ball there. 1830 Tom Thumb. That doesn't really focus, but there was a couple things around 1830. Here's another one, 1831. This is the longest surviving steam locomotive from that era, the John Bull. 1831, so 1 year later. So this is an epic one. This is pretty important. It's got these two drivers. It's got this pilot, and it's got this crazy cattle guard here. It's got a horizontal boiler versus the vertical one over there. And it's just got a wood burner. You got all that wood there. You fire it and throw it into the firebox there. And you got a little passenger car here. It was pretty simple, but you got to start somewhere. And that's kind of where it all starts, 1930s-ish. Now, Lionel came out with this set. This is the classic General locomotive that came out real early. This is a 440 wheel arrangement. This was huge back then. This was the original American. This was the name of this. They all had different names, and this was called the American style locomotive. And Frozen 2 puts this train at 1846. This is pretty modern for 1846, so this is not probably all that accurate, but it does have a coal. I mean, they're using, ice Elsa crystals here, I guess, but it was a wood burner, and so that puts it at 1846. I also have the little people here. Just fun little set. I like the color scheme. I really like the pearl on the top of this. And so you got all the extra cars in here. I got some extra things back here. But it just looks really nice. It's real sparkly. It's fun. Okay, so let's move on to 1870, which is actually 1869. Oh, I missed one. Let me go ahead and say this is the Transcontinental Railroad. This is the two trains. So we had one train coming from Oklahoma, Nebraska, and one train coming from Sacramento, California, I believe. And so one was going this way, and they met in Utah. So this is the point in Utah, and there was a golden spike when they put that in. It combined the United States together as one unit. There's a little more backstory here. Before there was the Transcontinental Road, they had what it all started was the gold rush. And so the gold rush was the reason people wanted to go across America. Before then, it was like, why even bother? Why make all that journey? You have the giant mountains in the way. It's too much work. Everyone forgot about it. Now, American government decided they did want to make a transcontinental railroad, but in 1800s, the United States was so divided. You have the North and the South, And do you go above? Do you go the middle? Do you go the south? All of the states couldn't agree on a route to get to California. That all changed with the Civil War. Now, Abraham Lincoln said, well, screw the southern states. We're going to go straight through the middle like it should. And so they finally passed the thing from Congress in order to find a route to go to California. Now, before they did that, they had if you wanted to get to California, you had to go all the way around South America to get to that part right there. That was a big journey. And before they did that, they did agree to a Panama Railroad. So you would take a boat all the way to the Panama Railroad, cross the railroad, and then come back up to California. So this was the Panama Railroad. And I don't have any trains from that, but this is the Panama Railroad. This predates that. This was started in 1849, and this is the this was the anniversary stamp thing. And so Panama Canal, so they finally got that running, and then they went to the Transcontinental Railroad, and then this just went to dust. They bankrupt, and they lost all their money because no one was going through this anymore. They were going straight through America. So this was the Panama Canal. That's kind of in between the two. And then you have the Transcontinental Railroad. This is the infamous picture with the Jupiter right here and the Union Pacific 119 right here. So this is so important. I really needed this in my collection. It came with this gold remote, which is pretty cool. But you have the 440 arrangement here, and pretty cool. You have this big smoke box. Now these were wood burners, and if you've ever burnt wood, oh, my lights went out. Let me try this real quick. Oh boy. There we go. Let's try this one more time. I need to get a bigger power supply for my LEDs. Okay, so if you've ever burnt wood, you know that there's ambers, there's ashes, all that stuff goes through the firebox, comes around here. And so with this nice big smokestack, you have a big area where that air can slow down, cool, to not catch things on fire. And Union Pacific did a little differently. They had a shorter one there. Maybe they didn't have as much issues with fires. But anyway, different designs, small boilers here. You got a small, everything's pretty small. So let's move on. 1880. All right, so if you ever knew anything about me, I love the movie Back to the Future. Now, Back to the Future is based on the movie takes place in 1885. This locomotive is a little bit earlier than that, but you can see the similarities between the Jupiter and the 131 right here. And the 131 is a 460, which means 4 in front, 6 in the back, 10 wheels. So this is called a 10-wheeler. It's also a wood burner. And while this was very epic for Back to the Future, I have the remote here to power the train. I have all these extra cars here. We got the bad guy van from number 1. We got Biff's Cadillac there. And we have a couple different versions of the DeLorean. But this was actually, the train itself is more epic than you would think. This is actually the Sierra number 3, and the Sierra number 3 was a surviving train that was in the movie industry. Now, this train, Sierra number 3, was in over 250 movies. So this train, while it was in Back to the Future, it was in way more movies. All the westerns use this train. A lot of commercials use this train. This train in real life is still around. It's got a new boiler, and every now and then they'll put it in the 131 paint scheme, but the train is really cool. And that's the Sierra number 3. One of the most videoed trains ever. Let's move on to 1912. Now, if you know anything about Lionel trains, model trains, you got to have a Thomas the Train. Thomas the Train is not an American train. All of these are going to be American. This is going to be British based, which had different bumpers, a little bit different. You also have, oh, I forget his name. Number 6. I forgot his name. I'll remember it here in a second. But his pistons are right here. They're on the outside. Now, Thomas, on the other hand, actually, in the real life, the pistons are on the inside, and so that's why Thomas has this weird, you only see this beam here. But that is actually accurate to his style. Now, Thomas, the tank engine, so he is a tank engine. These are tanks. So this is a tank of water, and on the other side is another tank of water. Now, you need 2 things to make a steam engine go. You have the coal and the water, and then you boil the water to make the steam, and that's what powers them. So he is a tank engine. Most trains have the tank in the back, so you got a tank here and the wood up there. So Thomas the Tank Engine, these are all tank engines because they don't have a tender. They're a tenderless locomotive. All right, so let's see. These are also an important thing from Lionel history. This is the Lionel trolley, number 60. This was really cool back in the day. It came out in the 50s, and it was a bump and go. So what it means is it would go somewhere, and in these little bumpers move. And so it would click back and forth, and it could go down the track. It was a bump and go. It was just really simple. But this is kind of the 1900s area. We had a lot of, this is a trolley. Anything with this metal beam on the top is called a trolley, because this part is called the trolley. This is not a trolley. This is a car. This is a city car. I forget the name of it. But anything with a trolley, you can technically call it a trolley. So it's called a trolley, rapid transit, streetcar. You can call it a streetcar, but this is not a trolley. This is a cable car. Now, a cable car does not have a trolley. It doesn't have any electricity to it. Cable car on the bottom has a gripper. Now, the gripper, literally, there's a cable. This was in San Francisco. They had big hills, and people didn't want to walk the big hills, so they had literally cables going through all of the hills. And the cables were in little channels on the street. And so the trolley had a little gripper, and it would grab that cable, and it would pull it up the hills. And then it had brakes, and so when it came down, it would hit the brakes. And so that's what they did in the 1920s, and they still have this cable car right now. This is a San Francisco, this is the Lionel version that I made of a cable car. Excuse me. Okay, so moving on. 1915. Let's pull this one off. All right, Eerie, crazy Eerie. So, Eerie Railroad. So you had, this is in the New York area, New York, Pennsylvania area. So you had New York, Eerie, and Pennsylvania Railroad. All 3 real close together. So New York had all of New York, Pennsylvania had all of Pennsylvania, and then Eerie was kind of this crazy little zigzag between the two, and they went to the Eerie Lake Erie. Duh. Okay. So it went from Lake Area kind of to New York City, and it went back and forth, and they had this tiny little line, and that's what they did. They kind of did some weird stuff. Now, one of the weird things they did was this, was it a 2, 8, 8, 8, 2. And that's, look at that. There's drivers under the tender. Now, this is insane. This is what they did. They said, we wanted more grip. Well, now you got it. You got tons and tons of grip. Now, this was pretty much a failure. It did not work. the boiler was too small to make these go. So it would run out of water, it would run out of steam, and this whole apparatus just didn't work at high speeds. It used up a lot of steam, and it used up way too, it was not efficient at all. And it had tons of grip, I'll give it that. It never slipped. This thing had so much grip that for 1915, the cars that this would pull, they would put so many cars back there that would actually rip the couplers off the cars because it had so much power. It had too much power, way too much power, too much grip. So it didn't really work, and they ended up keeping it. They didn't trash it, but it only ran around 5 miles per hour at a decent miles per gallon type thing. So while it was a failure in real life, they still kept it. It was okay. It did, when they needed grip, it had grip. So it did serve a purpose, but it wasn't the answer that they were looking for. So I really like it. While it was a failure in real life, it is a beauty in model form because I just love all this gearing, and to see this triple whammy of running gear is really, really cool. So that's the Eerie triplex. Okay, so 1920. 1920, this is based on the 1957 girls train set. Now, in 1957, Lionel was trying to figure out how to make more money. They said, well, we sell mostly to boys, let's try selling to girls. So what they did is they took the cheapest train they had, and they made it pink. Not only did they make it pink, but they made a whole bunch of different colors. Now, they thought this was going to be a really good idea, but it failed because girls didn't like the pink and boys didn't like the pink. So it was a huge flop. It didn't sell very well. A lot of these were sold to the train stores, and they didn't sell. And so all of the train stores got all mad, and so they sent them back. And so they sent them back to Lionel, and they all got repainted black. Now, collectors, years down the road, they said, oh, I have everything I need, every collection that I have except this black one, and so, except this pink one. And so this one got super rare, and it became worth a ton of money. And so this is the historic pink girls train that was ugly but awesome at the same time. Now, this train came out with all these different colors. It had this kind of goofy, goofy/beautiful controller here. Now this is all Lion Chief. This is the Williams version, which has way more details than the original. This has this chrome here. It's got these diamonds in here that are green. It's got all this neat little details in here. It's got beautiful running gear. This is the Williams version, which is stunning. The Lionel version, I believe, said Lionel Lions over here. But that's the history of that one. It's just really neat. It's crazy colors, which is it's just interesting. Let's keep going. All right, so GG1. This is the 2332 GG1. Now, back in the day, this was a huge hit because they were dual powered. This thing is a brick. It is absolutely super heavy, and it could pull a lot of cars, which is kind of what you wanted back then. I am out of order. I need to be talking about this one over here. This is, okay, so 1929, the stock market crashed. And with it went people with money. And so Lionel, like every other company in the Great Depression, was hurting. And so Disney, back in, this was in 1932, and it says Disney back in the day, they were also hurting, and they were trying to get people to, just have fun with Mickey. And so Disney actually approached Lionel Company and said, hey, could you make this for us? And so Disney and Lionel partnered up to make a wind-up hand car, and they sold these for like $1 a piece, which back in the day, it was about $15 in modern money, which people could afford. They couldn't afford, you know, train sets like this. So they could afford a little wind-up car, and it came with a piece of track, and came with, this isn't the one. The original one was tin plate, and it was real vintage. These were made of plastic or an early clay material. But this train, this Mickey Mouse car, is what saved Lionel from bankruptcy. And so it's also historic. It's as historic as some of these other trains, this Mickey Mouse hand car. So that was 1932-ish, a couple years after, kind of in the middle of the Great Depression. They came out with this, and Lionel and Disney they made enough money to keep themselves going off of that little hand car. But let's go back to the GG1. Now, the GG1 is an electric. Now, Pennsylvania, really big on electrics, because in New York Central Station, steam was not allowed anymore because of the smoke and the grossness of steam power. So they only allowed electric to be in their Grand Stations, Central Station. So the Pennsylvania Railroad came out with a catenary system, which is wires on the top, and it had a ground at the bottom. And so you had this electrified system. And so it's pretty firmly believed that this was the best electric ever made, that it was super reliable. They used these trains for 50 years. It started in 1938. And the Pennsylvania Railroad, these are just awesome trains. They are fully electric. They had a couple, I think 10,000 trains over here. And this was the ZW. That's a ZW remote. So I kind of pair those together. But that's a GG1. Electric, fully, all these kind of move like that. It had 12-wheel drive, which is pretty cool. Okay, so 1934, let's pull that one. This is the Polar Express. We got the, Santa Claus, and we got an elf here. That's another hand car. But here we have the Polar Express, another classic from Lionel. It's in the movie, I don't know, you guys already know about the Polar Express. But that's important to any collection. I don't know exactly when the Polar Express was, because it's a fictional story. But you get the idea. Here's the cars from there. Alright, so moving forward, we have the 1936. So this is a New York Central locomotive. Back in the day, airplanes and the automobile was starting to kick off. 1936. So in order to boost passenger service sales, they started to make the locomotives and the cars more aerodynamic, make them cool. If you look at these trains, they're just black. They're just black. They're just black. And they were trying to be sexy. They're trying to be cool. The airplanes were cool. The cars were cool. How do we make our trains cool? So what they did, this was the Mercury, and this is a Marx train. There aren't many models in O gauge for the Mercury, and so this is the one I like. And Marx was a competitor to Lionel back in the day, and so I've made this as they were a cheaper brand and they were more affordable, which give or take. But this is a custom that I made of the Mercury, and it had this beautiful white wheels and all of that right there. So really cool. New York Central. So next we come up to 1938, 2 years later. Now they came out with the New York Central 20th Century Limited. Now this is one of the main streamlined locomotives that people think of. It's it has the not skull and wheels. Yes, skull and wheels. And these are beautiful wheels. This is the New York Century 20th Century Limited. This is the train that everyone says, oh, pull out the red carpet. This was a premium train that went from Chicago to New York City, and it was a nice level route. It was fast. It was just super upper class. And these are the passenger cars. They had new streamlined passenger cars. A lot of cool movies back then. A lot of movie stars going from place to place. All of the rich people. Really, really beautiful engine. You have this gray with this mohawk right here, comes all the way down, and they really did a better job at streamlining the locomotive versus some of the other ones down there. And we've got a coal tender on here, and then there are no Vista domes with this train because they didn't come out yet. Let's move on to 1941. Now this is my favorite streamlined train. Now this is a semi-streamlined train. It's got a little bit less, but this is the Southern Pacific Daylight. Now, Southern Pacific, 1941. So this came out right at the beginning of World War II. So we have, now Southern Pacific is, you know, West Coast. So they got a lot of mountains, a lot of hills out there, and so they need something more powerful than this Hudson right here. So this is a northern locomotive, and it's got, originally had single headlight in front, and then later on they moved to this dual. We have all of these drivers, lots of power, this giant boiler here, making lots of steam to power all of these drivers. And just a huge, massive train that had power, it had speed, it had everything you would ever want. Now, later on, as this train still exists, and that's why it's really neat, and the watering stations throughout America have been slowly deleted because nobody needs water anymore. Nobody fills tenders with water anymore. So in order to run a train like this, now you need more water. And so they have this extra water tender back here. So it's pretty much standard with this train now, because this one back in the day, this one only lasted 10 years before it was completely scrapped. It was outdated. It was, nobody cared anymore. So this went in the trash, and it only lasted about 10 years. Now this one, it was still around. Now it's, all of its sisters are gone, but this one's still around. So in order for this one to stay alive and moving, it needs extra water. Now the coal can last quite a bit in one of these, and so the water is what they need. Now, since this train is still surviving, I do have a Vista Dome way back here. Now, this train never had a Vista Dome, but because it survived, its diesel versions did have, and it had the same paint scheme. So the diesel versions did have a Vista Dome, and that's a full Vista Dome. I'll tell you more about that in a second. Let me go to another 1941, which is the big boy. Now, this one is, it's probably one of the most epic trains in this whole group. You have the giant wheel arrangement. They took everything that was wrong about the triplex and they fixed it. This was a mechanic's dream. Everything was right where they wanted it to be. It was simple, it was strong, and it's absolutely massive. There's a giant big hill in Wyoming, and it's very hard to get up that hill, especially when you're pulling lots and lots of cars. And so what Union Pacific did was they made, well, how can we make our Challenger even bigger? So the Challenger, and then we have the big boy. And so how can we make our Challenger even bigger? So this is what they came up with. And this is what they have. And the 4014 is the one that they restored, and you can see this in the 2019 videos. I think they're going to do another run of this train, but just absolutely epic. Union Pacific, this is the earlier version where it was running coal. It is now running oil, which is more fuel efficient. They're burning, it's bunker C oil, which is basically used diesel engine fuel or engine oil or something. It's a recycled, purified oil that they're using in their tender now, which is really cool. This one I put the, if you can see over here, it says, in that white that's blurry, it says big boy right there. But back here you can see another diesel. Now this Union Pacific, when they run it now, it's got very expensive brakes, and their brakes are from the 1940s, and the design is from the 1940s. So they usually run it with a diesel in order to use the diesel's high efficiency regenerative braking type thing with the diesel. So it brakes with the diesel, and that it runs with the big boy. But this is really, really cool. 1941, World War II. They used this to haul tanks to help out the American war effort. Same thing, while this one was mostly doing freight, this one did all of the troop transport in the 40s, all throughout World War II. There's a whole bunch of neat stuff about how Americans had to share this train with the troops going to the Pacific arena in World War II. And so you would have military people in those cars right there. But really, really neat. Let's keep going. long video. 1946, we have, dun, 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 the beginning of diesels. Oh, no. So here's the diesels. These were the early diesels. They were junk. They were not very good. That's why Pacific still wanted to go steam, because they weren't sure about the new diesels. They weren't all that powerful. These things, this was an Alco PA, and it smoked like crazy. It burned. It looked like one of those vintage 80s trucks with all that black smoke coming out. They say it was a joke that these were so inefficient that they would make any steam train proud, that the diesel smoke coming out of these trains was so black and so nasty that it looked like a steam train. And so these were not very strong, and so they would double them up. So you get 1 + 1. So you'd have a whole string of these to get enough power to move what you wanted. But you click that button and you start. These trains, they take 5-6 hours to start up. They're a huge nightmare when it comes to maintenance. They're not very safe. These are 300 psi. They're very dangerous. If these explode, and these exploded over here all the time, they're very dangerous. And so the diesel engines all maintained. This is the future, literally the future. So you had, this is based on the original version from the 50s. This is the Eerie Railroad. Again, the Eerie Railroad doing some crazy things. They're not afraid of doing something crazy like diesels. So they went with these. And then let's go a little bit further, 1950. Now this is my favorite diesel engine. This is the Santa Fe Super Chief, which this is a Western train. Santa Fe, we got kind of the middle of the United States going to California. It's kind of that area right there. You have this beautiful stainless steel, something modern, something to really catch the eye. And you have this nice red with all of this chrome polished stainless steel. And this is where the Vista Dome comes out. So we got, so this was all about service. Just like the New York Central, we had premium service with this train. We had the Harvey House diner car making great meals with those hot ladies. There's more about that. So the Harvey House was they were a restaurant that would be on this train, and you could get some really good food. But they had the thing with them is they had hot waiters, which was kind of interesting for the time. But this is where the Vista Dome really comes out. They advertised the sky view. You could sit in this top bunk and you could see the world, and that's what they were trying to do. They wanted people to see the world in a train, which what a great way to do that. Okay, so let's move forward. 1954, we have the New Haven, and this is a jet. Now this is same with New York City. No steam allowed, and New Haven was kind of a goofy company, kind of like Eerie, trying different things. This is a New Haven rectifier engine, and what made this was kind of a failure. I'll tell you right now, it was not that great of a locomotive, kind of like this one over here and this one over here, because it not very powerful, not very good. This was way better. This one not very good either. Now that's because this is an electric, and this one ran on AC and DC both. While the GT1 only ran on AC, everything was AC, very simple, very reliable, everything worked great. Now this one ran on both. It had a really fancy rectifier in there that would convert the AC to DC. Now there was a problem there because when you convert AC to DC, the components got hot, and so they got so hot that they had to add fans to it. Now they added so many fans to it that it became loud, and so they called it jets because as it's coming along, it goes shh. It sounded like a jet engine. They were so loud, and they had the infrastructure was crumbling and the bridges weren't so great back then, so they said, okay, well, you can only make it this big, so they had to cram everything in this little tiny spot. And what happened was, when you cram all the hot stuff in one little spot and you have all this stuff that's getting hot, well, they would catch on fire. It is what it is. They would start to catch on fire. They have electrical issues. They had all kinds of issues, but New Haven, crazy company. They went with this beautiful orange, black, white color scheme. It was a big seller back in the day because of that beautiful color scheme. And they eventually dissolved into other companies, but I really like this train because it's so colorful. Okay, so let's keep moving on. 54 to 2014. This is kind of a mixed bag. This is just displaying some goofy ones that I have made. This is the Transformers Astro train, which is a Japanese train, technically. We have some dragons here. I have a weird trolley that's a end of the line Halloween train, just for fun. And this is a 2002 Audi from the TV show Top Gear. Top Gear did a series where they put train wheels on a car, and they did this kind of trailers, and they made a train out of a car, which is hilarious. And it was a fun little show, and so I made a version of that. All right, so 2014. That is kind of the now era. This is BNSF. This is a tier 4, so there's different tiers of fuel efficiency. And so this is a really neat train. It is a modern train. It's got all the bells and whistles, and I'm starting a collection of just now kind of stuff. You have a modern tank car and stuff like that. But that's just a beautiful, I love the paint scheme. I love the orange. I love the yellow and the black and the silver. It's just, I see this every day on my trip to work. And I just, I'm sorry, I just think it's cool. I think it's a good looking locomotive. Tier 4 uses all the new technology. What's crazy about this train right here, this Tier 4, is it has the same amount of power as the big boy. This has a little bit more power than the big boy. So if you see 5 of these lined up, just imagine 5 or 6 of those big boys being in a line. It's just crazy how much power these have. They have a diesel engine, and then the diesel engine converts that to electricity. They convert that electricity to all these motors down here. Each one of these has its own motor. You have all this drive here, so you're never going to slip. You have all this traction down here. The diesel technology really is better than steam, because when you have steam, you have drivers that aren't powered. It's like, these are not powered. Well, let me go back. These had some weird power things on them back in the day, but these are all powered. Those don't power, and so most of your weight needs to be on these drivers to get grip. Well, down here, you're all-wheel drive down here, which is really, really cool. So that's the BNSF Tier 4, and you really can't go from beginning to end without one of these. This is just a beautiful engine. All right, so this is more of a funny one. This is 2015 plus. This is the Lionel Star Trek. So I got all this stuff. I got the Enterprise down here, and I have planets. I got the Romulan Warburg. We got the Borg Cube. We got the Enterprise E. That's a little bit later. We got a lot of fun stuff down here. It's got just the Enterprise. Now, obviously, this is an EMD F3, just like the Santa Fe Super Chief. But we got the Star Trek stuff on it. Just fun. and we have more Star Trek stuff here. So that that brings us from 2014 down to 2,363. So we just add that here, and I got other ornaments here. We got the Romulan warbird, or the Klingon bird of prey. Let me get that right. But there you go. I have got 39 minutes into this video, and I think I've done a pretty good job of going through all of this stuff. I can't think of anything I forgot. This was my grandpa's train that I inherited. That's the train that started my entire collection. And it has the original knobs here, and I've converted this all to Lion Chief, so it's got this stuff right here. All of these are going to be Lion Chief. But I think I've covered everything. We got just steam, and we got diesel down there. We have the beginning of steam coming on down. Eventually, I'm gonna paint this, and I'm gonna change this wood to match more of the stuff in there. I don't think I forgot anything. But there you go. Boy, thanks for hanging in with me. Thanks for watching. I have some other books up here. We got Jurassic Park San Francisco. We got this one's really good about the it's a fun kids book about the Jupiter 119. We got a really good Union Pacific Big Boys book. We got Router the Chief, the Super Chief. That guy right there, Super Chief. We got BNSF. We got the 20th Century Limited. That's a really good book by Zimmerman right there. This book right here is a really good book about the 20th Century Limited. I don't know if that focuses. Let's see. Daylight Reflections. That's a really good book. Eerie Railroad. They are just crazy. Everything they do is just completely beyond what you would think. They're a terrible company. They went through thousands, like millions of bankruptcies. They were just a horrible, deep pockets, just corrupt, terrible company. But they are very interesting. All of their wacky ideas to make profit and then they eventually dissolved because they couldn't compete against New York Central. They couldn't compete against the Pennsylvania Railroad, so they just kind of dissolved. But it was they struggled so hard. They had this little line of track. And then I have all of my Lionel catalogs right here. And then here's all of my MTH. Now, I do have a good collection and a good smorgasbord of brands here. We have Lionel. This is a Williams. And we have Lionel. This is some other weird tin plate collection. We have, this is a MTH. This is a Williams. This is a Lionel. That's the Lionel. This is a Marx. We have another Rail King MTH. Rail King. We got MTH. Lionel. This is a Williams with Lionel Electronics. We have a Lionel, a MTH, and then let's see, Lionel. This is a Williams streetcar with just an extra body on it, and then Lionel. So there you go. I'm about to run out of battery power. Thank you for watching. That's it. Thanks for watching. All right, bye. Thanks.